Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Do I need to turn this mic on?
Yes,
I do? Okay.
because otherwise
Hi, can you, wait.
the recording won't have your voice otherwise.
Okay, I feel like I'm at karaoke. All right, so, good evening. Welcome everybody to, the Land Use Zoning and Public and Private Housing Committee of CD3. Today, we're just gonna be covering, two items. Will be, I think the Pratt Center for Community Development present to us a housing needs, and affordability needs analysis that we asked them for. So we're super excited about that. And then we'll take some questions. So we're gonna ask folks to allow Sylvia to present and did you bring the cards?
Oh, I wasn't sure where that, no, but I
Okay.
can, yeah.
So, if you can hold your questions, to the end, if something is super burning and you think it's super relevant because we need this information to move to the next point, then the committee members can raise their hand and let us know. After that, we're gonna just cover, the district needs statement and we'll be passing around, something that we drafted that everybody has hopefully contributed to. And if they haven't at this point, I think we're basically just reviewing. And only looking for really major changes, if there are any that need to happen, so that we can be done with this. And so I think we're gonna start, we're gonna give, I think, Sylvia about half an hour or so to present, and then we'll start with the questions then.
So you're missing roll call.
I
So
know.
maybe you just want to take the names of people who are here to go on record with this.
You know, I was gonna do roll call, I just
Okay.
wanted to
I'm sorry.
address everyone, all right? So we'll start out with, roll call, and then, did you guys look at the minutes? But we can't, I mean, we don't have to vote on them really, but you should have looked at them. So, Alistair,
Yes,
present,
present. Rod,
Rod,
present.
Michelle,
Present.
Jaylene, Sandra,
Present.
any other community board members? Huh? Me, Damaris, present.
There you
And
go.
for right now, I'm not gonna list them all in the spirit of time. But for now, they are absent for the first half of the meeting. Let's start, Sylvia. So we have Sylvia, and I just wanna say something very anecdotally that I think is really cool, all right? So, we asked the Pratt Center because they are a reputable institute that has a lot of years of experience in urban planning and data crunching. I've worked with them loads, a lot, throughout my career. When we met with them, the planner that they brought on to help with the study was Sylvia, and you're probably wondering, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because about 10 or more years ago, probably a lot longer, Sylvia used to intern for me
Wow.
at Goals. And so here we come full circle, right, where she was learning and now she's in a position where she's teaching. And I thought that that was a wonderful thing, and I'm super proud of everything that she's doing and very happy and excited to be learning and working with her. Thank you.
Thank you. Going right back. Goals was a very formative learning experience for me. Okay, so yeah, I will be doing a lot of talking, but I'll try not to take too long with it. And yeah, if you have burning questions, either write it down as something you have, or I was thinking if you want to come up and write on here, so if you're worried you're gonna forget it, we'll come back to them at the end. But yeah, thank you so much for giving space in your meeting to talk about the research we did on housing needs in your community district. So, go this slide in advance. Okay, so briefly, Pratt Center for Community Development. Who are we? Why am I here talking to you? I'm Sylvia Morse, Director for Research and Policy at Pratt Center. We've been around for a little over 60 years as part of Pratt Institute, doing community-based research and participatory planning with the goal of having a more just and affordable city. And so we were brought on to do an analysis looking at housing needs in the district, understanding that you have other projects underway, you know, looking at district needs and a demographic analysis. But we were really specifically looking at a few questions around population. So income, household size, age, and then how all of those things intersect. And then the other side of housing needs, right, is what you have in terms of housing. So what we could find about the housing stock in terms of affordability levels, apartment sizes, and location and distribution of affordable housing across the district. I'll say, you know, we're constrained by the data that's available from the city. So if there are questions about certain things that we didn't get a chance to look at, feel free to keep those in mind and I'll explain sort of why that might not have been included. And also to say this is like a presentation summary of a longer report. So there's some stuff that we studied that isn't going to make it into this evening's discussion, but I can always answer more questions. All right, so first we'll go through the population, highlighting a few key findings, again, looking at income, household size, and age. So the first thing to understand about income in the district, right? What we did here was we looked at median income by household size. And for comparison, we looked at the New York City AMI, right? Which is what HUD and HPD use to decide, to figure out affordability levels for housing. And this is just to give a relative sense, right? Of like median incomes for a 1-person household, a 2-person household, how those compare if you were to see, you know, what 100% AMI or area median income citywide would be for the district. So key findings is that across all household sizes, median incomes in Community District 3 are lower than this New York City AMI metric and by city median income. And the household sizes that have the lowest median income compared to New York City AMI are 1- and 2-person households, and then on the larger end, the 5- and 6-person households. So we also know that income varies by all kinds of, we have a ton of income inequality in the city, in the district, right? But one thing we looked at was median income by census tract. And so I know you all know your neighborhoods and your district really well, so this probably isn't necessarily a big surprise to you, but just important to point out that incomes vary by household size, by geography. And the key takeaway here is that median incomes are lowest in the census tracts that are along the waterfront, which, you know, again, you know your district, but also later when we analyze housing, that tracks with the location of public housing, indicating that it's, as we know, a key source of low income and affordable housing in the district and in the city. So when we look at median income by head of household, by age of head of household, we also see disparities in income, right? And I should note, like, these age brackets come from census data, so we didn't invent these. These are the categories they use, so we weren't able to break it down more granularly. But some key takeaways here are that adults aged 25 to 44 are the only age group in Community District 3 where median incomes are higher than citywide. They follow the same trends, right? It makes sense that adults largely of what we consider working age have higher median incomes than other age groups, but that disparity is a lot bigger in Community District 3 compared to citywide. So the median income for that age group, 25 to 44, is more than 5 times higher than senior households, and more than double that of adults that are in the age group 45 to 64. So then we also looked at population by household size. So like, how are people living? What size households are people living in? And nearly half of households in Community District 3 are people living alone, 48.6%, right? Higher rate than citywide. I'll just jump to the takeaways here. And so like it's about a third citywide, nearly half in Community District 3. And overall, the household sizes in Community District 3 are smaller than the trends we see citywide. And so households of 3 or more people appear at like a smaller rate or smaller percentage than citywide. So then we also looked at household composition, right? Who are people living with? So, we broke this into people living with family. In the census, they break this down by marital status and other stuff, but we consolidated to people living with family, people living alone, and people living with what is identified as non-family others, so that might be roommates, other arrangements. So, as I said, the largest share of household composition is people living alone. The smallest, oops, sorry about that. There we go. And what we saw in our analysis is that, among family households, people who are living with family, the majority, a little more than half, are headed by people ages 35 to 64. Among people who are not living with family, the vast majority, 82%, are headed by people under 34. So when we think about who we might think are people living with roommates, that's, people in the earlier stages of adulthood. So I also just wanted to do a spotlight on the senior population. So a third of Community District 3 households are headed by seniors. This is people aged 65 or higher. You might sometimes see slightly different numbers, like I saw in district needs, because some reports will identify seniors as people age 60 or older. And also when you look at population, that's different than household and head of household. Just want to clear that up. But a third of households in the district are headed by people who are 65 years or older. Seniors are more likely to live alone than with other people, especially among tenants. A little over 57% of senior tenants are living alone. And in the age group of people who will become seniors, so people who are 55 to 64, they are also more likely to live alone than with other people.
That age.
And just to note that seniors who do live in owner-occupied homes live alone at a lower rate than tenants do. The other thing we know about senior households is that they are a low-income population. So 58% of senior households in Community District 3 earn less than $29,000 a year. If we wanted to use that New York City AMI metric, they would be in that 0 to 30% range, which is considered extremely low income. So we're going to come back to this when we're talking about the findings around housing needs. And seniors represent the largest share of rent-burdened households. So then looking at the housing stock, right? What are we working with in terms of housing right now in the district? So first we looked at, this is using census data, overall, looking at the housing units, like what size apartments are we talking about in terms of number of bedrooms, right? So the largest share of apartments are 1-bedroom apartments, about 37%, and 2 bedrooms represent almost a third of units. When we think about that data I just showed about household size, and then we look at apartment size, there's like some relationship, right? We can't know that everybody is right size, right? Like we can't know that every 1-bedroom is 1 or 2 people. There might be families doubling up. We can't know that every 3-bedroom has a big family. There might be, a couple and they have an office, they each have an office, right? We don't know that, but overall there's a relationship between the smaller unit sizes and smaller household sizes. So then we also looked at the newer housing that's been built. We chose to define it as housing that's been built in the past 25 years, so since 2000. And there you can see that the share of 1-bedroom apartments is even bigger, right? So nearly half of the apartments that have been built in the past 25 years are 1-bedroom apartments. And what gets called family-sized apartments of 3 or more bedrooms represent the smallest share of new construction. So then we looked at affordable housing. In this case, we're looking at data that comes from HPD. This goes back only to 2013. So that's why the data starts there, not for any other reason. And these are like city financed units. So what we looked at here was the distribution of affordable housing by apartment size. And then we also looked at new construction versus preservation projects, right? So the darker blue is preservation, the lighter blue is new construction. So obviously, most of the affordable housing that's financed in the district are preservation projects, not new construction. That's one thing. The other thing is that the largest share of affordable units were also one bedrooms and just under a third were two bedrooms, right? So pretty similar to the overall new construction in the past 25 years. Studios represented 10% of affordable units, but if you look at just new construction, studios are much more common than among the preservation projects. And again, family-sized 4 or 5 bedrooms accounted for less than 3% of affordable units in the district and none in new construction projects. So new affordable housing, not building 4 and 5 bedroom apartments. So then we looked at the same data by AMI target, right? So affordability levels relative to city area median income. And the key takeaways here are that more than 3/4 of affordable housing units in Community District 3 are for people earning 60% of New York City AMI or less. 29%, a little less than a third of preservation units are targeting extremely low income households, so people earning 0 to 30% AMI. And the reason I'm not using income numbers is because it's different depending on the apartment, the household size. And so yeah, 29% of preservation units are targeting extremely low income units compared to 14% of new construction. New construction units are more likely to target incomes between 60 to 120% than preservation projects are. I know this is a lot of data, so we can come back and go over any of it again at the end. And so then we took another look and we looked at the apartment sizes and affordability levels together. In the report, we have this for new construction and for preservation, but I thought for today, it would make sense to just look at new construction. And so a couple of the key takeaways, I think, are that the apartments that are serving very low incomes represent the smallest share of newly constructed affordable units, of which like the largest share are studios. And a larger percentage of 3-bedroom apartments serve very low incomes than other unit sizes. So in other words, like the 1s and 2s are serving maybe slightly higher incomes. So then just to give a sense of where in the district we're talking about. So this is mapping projects or like buildings basically. So the blue is NYCHA, and the red is new construction, and the kind of yellow is preservation projects, right? But that's just looking at like the address. If we look at number of homes, like number of apartments, obviously like, whoa, we're gonna see that NYCHA is providing way more affordable housing. And a couple of things to note just about the geography. So the majority of preservation projects are located either south of Canal Street or north of Houston Street. There's kind of like a gap in the middle where there's not a lot of preservation projects. And the new construction affordable housing were all in 6 census tracts out of all 31 census tracts in the district. And more than half are in the Essex Crossing developments. So one thing is that when we're trying to look at unit counts and sizes, it's hard to map because they're all basically in the same place. So what we did in the report was we mapped the location of units for different AMI brackets, and we have multiple different maps for each of them, because as I said, otherwise they're just all on top of each other. But since most of the affordable housing is in the 30 to 60% AMI range, I'm showing that map today, right? And so we're showing the number of units are those circles, and then putting this on top of the map I showed earlier of median income in the census tracts, by census tract. So, so one of the, well, actually I'll talk about it in the takeaways, but as you can see, there's not necessarily new affordable construction or preservation happening throughout the entire district. So quickly going into some just key findings, taking together everything we looked at in population, everything we looked at with housing stock. So the first thing is that for housing to be affordable to local residents, it should be restricted to incomes that are below the 70% area median income. But that's speaking broadly, if I can go back to that first red bar graph, but it's different by different household size, right? So for 1 and 2% households, and then larger 5% households, apartments should target extremely and very low income people. The other takeaway is that for new construction, studio and 1-bedroom apartments should target more households at the lowest income, at the lowest AMI target, especially seniors. So when we look at that data around seniors, we know that senior housing for extremely low income people is absolutely needed in the district. The next is that, as I highlighted in the population, you're kind of, right now, the district is underrepresenting households of 3 people or more compared to the rest of the city. So if the district wanted to increase that population, one thing it might need to do is to increase the availability of family size units, affordable units. And the last is that when I showed that map of where the affordable units were and median income, new construction of affordable housing should be prioritized for high income census tracts that have seen little affordable housing production to the extent possible. So just to go back, right, like if you look at the districts with the darkest blue, which means they have the highest median incomes, they see the least affordable housing that's been developed. So that's a quick summary, and yeah, happy to hear what questions you have.
Is there
or
another-
reactions.
is there another mic here?
That was great. Thank you. Okay, so, let me just, let everybody know how this portion of the meeting goes. So we begin with questions from committee members. When we're done with that, we take questions from the public. If you want to speak, there should be speaker cards on the white table there. Please sign up and bring it forward, and then we'll call on you. Otherwise, if you're not gonna speak, you don't fill it out, so. So let's start. So do we have any questions from committee members for Sylvia?
I don't have a question, but I have a statement. I don't have a question, but I have a statement, but I think don't you heard that. I'm proud to say that within the last slide that you showed, the blue area, my campus, I live at a Section 8 housing, and we built a 2 100% affordable buildings. The next one, we have a family building, which is like 234 apartments, and then we have one for seniors that's coming up, and it's 40% of the AMI. So that's a good thing.
That's great.
And that's a good reminder that for the data, obviously, we're showing housing that has already been built,
Right.
not necessarily projects in the pipeline,
Right.
so.
Okay, great. Any other questions from committee members, Molly?
Quick one, can you please go back one more slide? I just wanna state the key takeaway again.
Oh, this one, yes.
This one, yeah. And also, I just want to clarify a little bit with you, because you showed a large number for the preservation unit, and in your diagram is most of them are in like NYCHA campus. So I'm curious, how did you like count that? If it's a NYCHA building, they did like capital improvement will that count as a preservation project?
So anything, so there's a law that got passed, that starting in 2013, the city has to, it's called Local Law 44, they have to report all of the projects that they're financing. So it's their definition of any preservation project that they have financed, under a certain bucket of program. So that data comes from them. I'd be happy to follow up and share more details on how they define it.
Got it, so that basically means if they spend money on one unit, that count as one unit, but that doesn't mean we got one more unit.
It just means they're preserving existing units.
Yeah, it's like not present like existing non-affordable unit to an affordable, but it might be. It wasn't affordable, it's still affordable. So
Yes.
that doesn't mean we get one more affordable unit.
Right.
We're just saving
Yeah.
We're trying not to have less. All right, thank you. Any other questions from committee members?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. My question was a bit about how we're calculating in the different demographics of what's most in need. Since we have already a large percentage of the neighborhood that's in NYCHA, for example, are we differentiating people who are already in some sort of subsidized housing versus not to calculate those needs? For example, for the seniors that are in housing that's already subsidized, do we know if, for example, of unsubsidized seniors, what their demographic is, just to have a better sense of who isn't being serviced?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is that there is no public data that tells us exactly who's living where, right? It would be awesome if we knew like the rent of every apartment and then the income of everyone who lived there or the age, right? But we're basically pulling together census data that tells us across the district within different census tracts, what are the demographics? And then we're pulling in housing data, but we're not really able to see one-to-one, like how many seniors are already in affordable housing, how many families are already in affordable housing, right? But what we do know is that, for instance, seniors are the largest share of rent burdened households. Some of them might be in rent stabilized housing where they're still rent burdened, right? And some of them might be in other kinds of affordable housing programs. So we kind of have to piece together the different kinds of data to tell a story and make some assumptions about what the gaps might be.
So when calculating, for example, the rent burden seniors, within this analysis, it wouldn't be able to differentiate a rent burden senior that's already in public housing compared to one that isn't, right?
Right, with public housing, we could probably be pretty sure that because the way that program works, they're not paying more than 30%, but rent stabilized, like a lot of people are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just add, that with the NYCHA rents, it's based on a formula. So it's easier to know, and so those numbers are, we can get them if we needed to, but I think that the analysis that you're presenting, for me, is very familiar to what I see. And the services and the way in which we set ourselves up at, at our organization to serve people in the district, and we serve a lot of seniors. Any other questions from committee members?
Just wanna add, I just raised through this, I wanna ask you, is there any possibility that you can get the data about how many units your regulatory agreement will expire sooner or later? With how many affordable unit we will lose in the future, maybe 5 or 10 years?
That was not part of the analysis we did. Maybe we can talk after this and see, I can try to get a sense of how much of a lift that would be. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess my question is sort of a follow-up to that, which is that, you said that you're defining affordable housing as city finance. But what about like 421A housing? Is that considered city finance in this definition? Because like, just to be really blunt, like I lived in a 421A rent stabilized apartment that would not be considered affordable to most people. So that's a question that, like, I feel like there are a lot of those units in our, like in all the Essex Crossing, for example.
Yeah, so like when we look at the data, this is including people who are, I mean, there's additional breakdowns above that 121% AMI, we just kind of stopped there, right? But like, it would it includes some 421A units. It's city-supported projects, so it depends on the sources that developers are like mixing together when they do a project. But yes, like this question of what is affordable, that's kind of why in that first chart, right, we're comparing median incomes in the district to how New York City defines area median income. So for every household size, that lighter red is 100% AMI. So for for the units that are serving even above 100% AMI, that gives you a sense of some of the units, right? So, you know, instead of calling it affordable housing, we could have said income restricted, right?
Right, cause like, yeah, that's I guess what I mean, because where I lived was not income restricted, even though it would be considered subsidized. I suppose in some way to the developer, at least not to me, but, so, yeah.
But,
You need the mic.
I'm sorry, I do have a question about where you used to live. So your building had 421A?
Yeah, it was.
Do you know that was it was the Essex Crossing?
Yeah,
Okay.
so like in the lease, it said it was rent stabilized, but like, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, they have other affordability things that, I think Essex Crossing is tricky, but it's a good question. I thought you were talking about other housing.
No, yeah, like
Okay.
specifically like the newer 421A, where it's like, you know, it's rent stabilized.
They're supposed to have income restriction. For 420, there's supposed to be some brackets that they use.
But it wasn't a lottery house, it wasn't lottery.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, really?
It has a subsidy. So that there's supposed to be some
Well, it's possible
sort
that
of,
we fit within the bracket, it just didn't.
yeah,
but
well,
it's
let me
like-
look into it, but
Yeah, but that was just my, like it feels like that term can be very broad, you know.
The recording's only gonna pick up the person who has the
who
mic.
has the mic? I'm sorry, I keep forgetting, I'm so horrible at that when it comes to these recordings and this mic. All right, anybody else have questions that's a committee member? Susan, do you have anything?
No.
Do we have any questions online?
Want to ask them to raise their Zoom hand?
Yes, ask folks online if you can hear me and you would like to ask a question, this is the time for you to raise your hand because we are done with the committee portion of this meeting. Nobody's raising their hand. Okay, so in the room, any of the guests with us, do they have questions? Did they submit any speaker forms? No?
I put some speaker forms in the back table.
One thing I'll say while you're checking that is, we used to be able to get a little more detail about different kinds of housing, like the rent stabilized stock, including by income, at the community district level. But the housing and vacancy survey that provides that data, the past couple of years, there were budget cuts and they stopped going below the borough level. So that was a real sad thing in doing this research because we lost some of that data. So my understanding is that the city is going to start, they used to hire the Census Bureau to do that study. My understanding is they're gonna hire someone else to start doing it. But just to say that like, if you all are interested in ever advocating for more data and having that research go back down to the community district level, we'd be able to answer more of those questions.
Maybe you can include that as part of your recommendations, right? Data, easier ways or recommendations for how to find or crunch some of the data. All right, so we don't have any other questions. There are no questions online. So that's a good thing. That means that your report was pretty thorough and answered our questions. And if we have any other questions, I'm sure that the committee members will let us know and we will forward them. But otherwise, this presentation will be made available, right? Yes.
This is on our website and the full report. This presentation's on our website now on the home page on the calendar. The full report, if you go on the website and look under resources, the full report is there. If you have any problems finding it, please let me know.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia.
Thank
Thank
you.
you to the press center for this great report. All right, so now we are going to move on to the next portion, which is the district needs. And we have a quick review We're gonna distribute the copies that we have. It hasn't changed dramatically from last year. We're still in the same situation, basically, but, what's the- Do the committee members know?
Yeah.
Make sure they have. Can somebody take some distribute?
Yeah, I'm just pressing that. So I don't have them for everyone,
I just need-
they will be published. And these are not final, so. Can I just say, so this is a result of all the changes that were made at previous meetings. And a little update from NYCHA. And then there's just one section where the office did some takeaways from the report. Everything else was put in at the meetings. There was some extraneous information taken out in the office. We had actually, when researching, sort of put in documented extra stats that were interesting but not unmet needs. So some of that extraneous was taken out. Also, we have to worry about length. So other than that, it should be what was discussed at all the other meetings. Anybody need a copy?
All right, Susan, can you say, for everyone in the audience, 2 sentences about what we're actually doing so that they understand the district needs and why we do
Good
it?
idea. The community boards are required by charter once a year to write a report of district needs. What the district needs are unmet needs of the community. We describe somewhat what's here already and then say what we need. And then the next step, which we'll be doing next month, is we will then be voting on specific budget priorities, like a roof for a NYCHA development, that sort of thing. But this is not policy, it's just strictly what we're missing.
All right, so I think we should, I'm gonna ask all the committee members, they're already doing that, some of you, take a look at this, spend a few minutes reading. We're looking for, I don't think there are any typos, but any substantive changes that are like major, that like, we know we can't like submit this with that.
Yeah, if it's wrong.
If it's like
Make a
wrong.
change if it's wrong, other than that, it's.
Yeah, this is
very
pretty
light
reflective of
finalizing.
like
Yeah.
comments we've received, what's been on the, what we've been sharing in the past and what we've discussed, so.
We have a takeaway from your report there too.
Giving us 3 more minutes.
Oh, yeah, no, we did. We did that. I went through the report. That's good timing, it's just in time.
1 more minute.
Because that's the message to the world, this is what we want you to do. What? No, what? And the things you put, this is what we want. Yes.
Okay. Do we need more time? Anybody need more time? All right, committee members, do you have anything blazing that is incorrect that needs to be omitted or changed? Rod has something. Tell us real quick.
I think for the third bullet point on the first page, maybe just some specificity, the median asking rent for the second quarter of 2025 is 4,425. What kind of a unit is that? That's like a studio or one bedroom. Doesn't matter.
I don't have it, would have to go to the, yeah, this is taken from the Furman, I'm sorry. This was taken from the Furman report, and that's the information they had.
Any other committee members? I mean, we can look at it, but I think. Any other committee members? No? Yes, please.
Going back, I guess this is from the report that was just presented.
Yes.
So when we say that affordable housing needed for local residents with below 70% AMI, was that 70% AMI then calculated also with people who already live in affordable housing, like in Nitro within the district? Because does that not skew then the income bands?
It is,
So it is based on the census data on the population as a whole, which of course is a sample, but presumably includes some NYCHA residents. But yes, they're like basing it on the income of current residents in the district.
Do we know what percent in the district of residents live in Nitro with affordable housing total? Is that part of the presentation I read?
So there are about 30,000 public housing residents that live in NYCHA, and there are approximately 165,000 residents in CB3 districts. So can somebody do the math?
That's not affordable.
They 30,000 public housing residents.
Right, but what percentage of affordable housing residents?
I can only tell you the percentage of residents that I know that live in NYCHA housing. Right now, that's what I can tell you.
we don't, yeah, we don't
I
have
can't, I
everything.
don't, I mean,
Yeah.
some
we
data we don't have. If you have an ability to get that data, if you have the ability to find that data to help us fine tune the reports, that's great. We got 2 weeks to do that. If you have something, you know, that you can break it down more specific and you can share that with Sylvia, and she can see how it can be incorporated, then we should do that. But the only numbers that I can give you that I know of are the number of residents that live in NYCHA. So you can calculate that by affordability, but there are some residents that live in NYCHA that are also above certain income bands. So we have to consider that as well.
Yeah, I kind of have the same question because because NYCHA is a percentage of income. So how it's like apples and oranges. Like if you're a NYCHA subsidized housing resident, it's not really like an AMI band that you're fitting in, right?
Yes,
Or
it is an AMI band.
But do we know the income of those?
Yes, it's 80% AMI is what you need, that's what you.
Can't carry.
Yeah, in order to live in NYCHA, you must meet an income eligibility criteria. Right now, the maximum income that you can have living in NYCHA is 80% of the AMI. So they definitely, most definitely calculate your income based on the local AMI. And the rents are set based on the fair market or a new formula that NYCHA has to determine the rents because they've changed it multiple times as a way to try to make it fairer among different income earners. Am I answering your question? I think the issue here is that it doesn't change. It doesn't matter where they live. 70% are below income, are below, we have enough data to demonstrate that the income of the highest income bands that are in the most need, regardless, are 70% or lower.
Am I saying that correctly? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the reason that we're using New York City AMI as a metric at all is because that's what the city uses when they're deciding on the income levels for units, right? That's the only reason we're using that, but what we're talking about is people's incomes. That dollar amount doesn't change, it's just the percentage of whatever the city is using it, right? But I think what Damaris is saying is that we're looking at the population as a whole. Yes, it includes some NYCHA residents who currently have stable, affordable housing. It also includes people who don't. We can't know that for sure, because the data doesn't exist to tell us that. But another way to think about it would be like, if someone who lives in NYCHA has a young adult kid who now is making whatever income less than the 70% and wants to apply for new affordable housing so they can move out and have their own family household, they live in the district, would want to stay in the district. So, just because someone has NYCHA housing doesn't mean they wouldn't want to move and have more affordable options.
Actually, that brings me to another question, sorry, which is like, so say like your child is living with you, in affordable housing or whatever version of it, is their income also taken into account in this survey?
Yeah. Oh, wait, oh.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so say like,
up there and
say like I, grew up in
I
my
think-
family's rent stabilized apartment and then
The
I go to
income
college.
is confusing, I think it's based on the census data, so it's whoever is within that census data track, so I don't think that we have, detailed specific data, I mean, I don't know that it exists to show like which developments, how many units are living with all these different income, bands, I don't know that we have that.
Yeah, I guess
It's based on the census data income.
Yeah, I guess because my question is like,
So NYCHA's not being cooperative and giving us all the data.
course.
If they did, we'd be talking, we'd be having a
Right.
different
But
conversation.
you know what I mean, like if we're basing that request on people who already have housing that they're not leaving from, are we
Who says
actually?
they're not leaving? We're making that assumption too. That's the issue here. That's what we're responding to, is that the income band for people, a lot of these families are doubled up that live in this housing.
Right, I think that that's overall my question, which is that the data doesn't really show us that, like, my sense is that we don't have enough granular data to really make a recommendation about like what we need, because.
So what would you suggest that we do then? What's the recommendation?
I'm not trying to be.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm saying, what do you recommend that we do then? What's the right appropriate level, because we have to base it on something.
I just think it can be a little. I'm just saying that I think we're operating in a somewhat murky space, and so it's difficult to make a bullet point that we need it for something like under 70% AMI, because I don't think we have granular enough data. That's my concern, I suppose, is that like we might be addressing a problem that we don't fully understand. That's all I'm saying. I don't have a
I appreciate
better.
that feedback, I mean, we'll take it into account, into consideration.
I see, where we could always use more data, but also, we have information. For instance, families we know are leaving District 3 because they can't afford rents. The reason we know that is because we're losing families with kids in schools, and they're kind of tracking, they know who's leaving and where they're going, and they know why they're leaving. So we do know that we don't have enough affordable family size apartments. We do know that there's many seniors, the data we have for seniors is inaccurate because it doesn't count a lot of people. Thank you. I think it's dying. I think it's dying, sorry, so we should come up here to speak if there's more. We do know there's a tremendous amount of seniors living in cubicles. So, we may not have really specific data that would be good, but we do know that we need this.
I just wanna say, many of you don't know what I do, I've been working in affordable housing for 25 years. I run Good Old Lower East Side, which is a local organization that fights for preservation and affordability, among other things. And I can tell you that we reach about 10,000 residents a year with everything that we do, and we service one-on-one directly nearly 2,000 people. The majority of those people are seniors. The majority of those seniors live in rent-burdened conditions. The majority of those seniors are looking for apartments. They live with their children, or they are being abused, harassed, you name it. I have personally witnessed seniors be removed from their apartment and put into nursing homes because they could not afford the rent. So seniors are a big issue here, and all the data supports this, all the data shows this. There are a lot of anecdotal things that we have to use in order to make this determination, because we don't have access to all the granular data because it doesn't all exist. But we cannot excuse or exclude our personal experience from what we see around us, and especially those of people who work day to day with the people who actually live in this neighborhood. So I can tell you that I'm very comfortable with some of these findings. That doesn't mean we shouldn't challenge it. It doesn't mean we shouldn't ask for more, right? I'm just simply saying that we should also temper our expectations about what is possible, because the data is not there. And it doesn't mean that because the data is not fully there, that we shouldn't come to some level of a conclusion. Because again, there's a lot of anecdotal information that supports these conclusions. And that's simply all I'm saying. Let's temper our expectations, let's try to fine tune this as much as we can. But I would ask the committee members to look at this with the eye of a resident who has seen this, who knows, who has a neighbor who's experienced some of this. We all know that affordable housing is a problem in this district. There's no arguing that. So I welcome all the committee members to give me any feedback, submit any questions, any way that they think we can get to more granular data if they really believe that this report is skewed. But otherwise, I think that we've been, the recommendation of 70% AMI, I'm comfortable with that, but if you guys have data that you wanna share to show that that's different, then do that. But otherwise, I'm happy with moving forward with this district needs statement, so that's where I'm at. We have to take some kind of a straw poll vote or something.
We vote next month.
All right, so, but we have to at least in this committee
Right.
say that we support this going to full board, right? So to me, that's a straw poll vote.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not upset with anyone for asking their questions. I'm just simply saying temper your expectations, because we don't have all this data and our budget is limited to what we could also ask for. We can't ask the processor to keep on researching and researching. So get your final questions through. If you think that it's gonna really significantly change the district needs, and if you also want Sylvia to take another look at that and possibly reconsider what her conclusions might be, but that has to happen in the next 2 weeks, please. All right, so that we can be done with this portion of it. And publish something that is real and can help us, move forward and inform our decision-making in this district, because we got a lot of projects coming up and we need this data to help us move forward. So if we don't have any other questions or points, yes, Molly?
Yeah, you should go up there and speak.
Come up here because
Sorry.
this mic don't work.
Okay, yeah. Not a big problem, just want to clarify a little bit, because like the last page, we talked about the NYCHA Section 8 housing, but when I read through the entire paragraph, it's all about NYCHA. and-
right.
Right, so it might be like NYCHA Section 9, if you want to refer.
Well,
to
I
public
think maybe the
housing.
reason that was put there, we'll take a look at it, is because the RAD sort of acts, but you're right, we're not
Yeah, that's-
making any reference to it.
Yeah, because you read and that
Yes,
public founding housing should be NYCHA Section 9 housing, not
Yes.
Section 8.
Yes, we're gonna, well, NYCHA is section 9.
Yeah.
It's not different, it is section 9, so you wouldn't put any. You would either include section 8 and we would say something, or we would exclude it.
Yes. That's.
So
one
we
thing.
should either, if we're not saying anything, then we should just, and that's what we'll do, we'll take it out.
Yeah, and also for the HEFC building, I just wanna see for the fourth line to the like seventh line, there's lot of recommendation here.
Okay.
And I agree, like they're all great recommendation, but I just feel we need to clean it up a little bit, so some logic not really work here, like, for example, like enhance and stronger resale restrictions, including sales price cap, that not help with the first sentence, like what we wanna say, like to ensure they remain in like financially
Solvent
safe,
and
yeah.
safe.
So like if we
So
want
to remain, so let's read it, to ensure they remain a financially solvent and safe, secure, and affordable housing in our district. HDFCs need expanded support services, financial training, enhanced and stronger resale restrictions, including expanded sale price caps, long-term tax abatements, and restrictions on disposition to for-profit management companies in the event of foreclosure. So I'm not sure where you feel that doesn't make sense.
That was from Herman.
That was from Herman?
Yeah, at their meeting, at your July meeting, I think.
It's like my
So you feel like
understanding.
it's too convoluted, the language? Is
No,
that-
like for my experience, I feel sometimes like a stronger resale restriction makes the HDFC harder to finance and reduce their finance health. Because they are too hard to resell, the HDFC cannot get income and they cannot get the like plate tax to support their financial need. So I feel sometimes the like a stronger resale restriction can be like not good to their financial health. So I just feel it's not logical to say to ensure they remain in a good financial situation, we need to stronger the resale restriction.
Well,
Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying, except that you have to know the history of the HDFCs, and so
Yeah.
the whole point of them and our battle in this community is to keep them affordable. And so the reason that that's language that's used here is that traditionally, as the regulatory agreements have expired, or even when they haven't expired, residents who own their units have sold their units in all kinds of ways for price tags that were not even approved by the board. I don't know what's going on.
I think these two are too close to each other.
So I think that there's been a universal call in this community to ask for stronger restrictions. We're not declaring what those are. Maybe it's because I'm on the side. I don't know, it's weird.
I just want to say that's what the committee discussed that's what Herman does too.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
not new. We've been over this and over this.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't say like the point shouldn't be here, I just think they should be separate to maybe two paragraphs, cause they like, if we make them one sentence, the logic is not really work here.
All right, so could you give us permission to just rework the sentence
Yeah.
so that it's cleaner?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want me to send it to Molly and have her do that?
I want us to look at it
Okay,
and then send her what we cleaned up, see if that works for her.
okay.
And then she can give, because, yeah, or either way, it doesn't really matter, but we gotta, we can just look at the structure of the sentence, so we don't have to do that right now. Any other? Alistair, please, come.
Thanks,
Can I keep
Madison.
this? I'll take that.
It's a question, it doesn't need to be
We'll edit
edited
it?
here. Here, on the first page, it says that the asking rents in CD3 went up 8%.
Where?
Here. Went up 8% compared to the from the prior year, for example.
Mhm.
Do we know, that I assume is mostly free market rents that gone up, which doesn't include the affordable housing portion. Do we know, since we're talking about affordable housing, what's the percentage in rent that went up in the affordable housing sector? Is that our stabilized rents?
We don't have that data usually, I'm not gonna tell you that doesn't happen. In NYCHA, it's hard because NYCHA is not based on that. NYCHA is based on income, and even when they raise the cap, right, it's still based on your income. So if you never reach the cap, you don't pay the cap, right?
Right.
But in private housing, that might be, but that data, we don't have it. So we should make a note of that so that we can see if we can find
Yeah, it'd be
anything.
nice to see how much the affordable, because we're talking about affordable housing, that's what we're,
Well, it's usually based on the AMIs,
okay.
right? It's usually based on the AMIs, and so I think, Sylvia, can we get data that shows, the different, housing stock by AMI?
Sorry, I wanna.
Sorry,
Now
can we
we're
get data that shows the different housing stock by AMI repeating for?
It really does feel like karaoke
I
now.
know, right?
So the data that's in the report, we do have a breakdown of AMI. I mean, I could share the larger tables that we thought were a little too overwhelming, but that show also the units by rent. What I was gonna say is that a lot of the housing goes up by, it follows the rent guidelines board.
Right.
So after you certify, there's a lot of different affordable housing programs, but in a lot of these, you certify at the beginning when you move in, at the end of the first year, and then it just goes up by the rent guidelines board amounts. So you could just look at the increases that the rent guidelines board has approved over whatever time period you want to look at.
Right, so if it's not luxury, HDFC or NYCHA, that would be the rent
Yeah.
increase standards.
So, just so I understand, like an elderly
Not
person.
speaking into the
An
mic.
elderly person in NYCHA, you mentioned elderly people get, outpriced from their
Mhm,
apartments.
mhm.
If it's based on AMI, aren't they then protected if their
If
income
they,
goes down?
yeah, an elderly person in NYCHA, anybody in NYCHA, anybody, is 30% of their income. So what you don't know though, is that the majority of these seniors, their annual income, I know Sylvia was talking about, but in the NYCHA population, those folks make like $800 a month. But let me just also tell you that NYCHA, for other people, like, I'm not gonna tell you how old I am yet. But, at some point, I'm gonna need some senior housing. If I didn't have housing, it would be a long time me waiting on that NYCHA waiting list, trying to get housing. And the other thing that people don't recognize about NYCHA is you do not really have the ability to pick where you wanna go. You have some ability. They may say in this borough, there's, vacancies. But if you were living in the Lower East Side, you could end up in the Far Rockaways. That's where you could end up, and there's no choice. So, it's a bleak situation, or it can be.
And can I
If you
add?
want to, wait, but before you, I wanna make sure you
There, so they-
have
Yeah.
everything in.
Yeah, no, it was just that 8%, if we could put it.
Yeah, well, Sylvia
In some
said she
context
thinks that it's
on
the
the
rent
board.
guidelines that we could look at, but NYCHA, we can't tell. The only thing we could look at NYCHA maybe is to look at their fair market rents, but they did set some ceiling rents. But they're pretty standard and they've been the same for a long time.
And I also, on an anecdotal level, I know that people have moved out of the city where their median income, or even high income, is a lot to do with schools. Once they have kids, the selection of schools here are not suitable for them. And I know that a lot of people anecdotally have moved
Yeah.
out for those reasons, separate from.
That's usually people though that are upwardly mobile.
They
I
can
mean,
afford
income, have a different mobility because of their income, right? You can't just leave a neighborhood because you don't like the school. If you can't afford to leave the neighborhood, I couldn't do that, and I'm a working person, so. Anybody else? All right, so we'll dedicate a few minutes, because I know there's a lot of folks here that are students, or journalism folks, I think, or reporters, or maybe you're just residents that are interested, and that warms my heart. But,
Sorry.
cause you don't know, these meetings are usually empty, so, does anybody have any questions? I know you didn't spell it out, yeah, go ahead, I'm just gonna let you raise your hand, please.
Come up there.
Come on.
Good evening, everyone.
Speak in the mic.
Good evening, everyone. My question is directly for you.
Oh.
I've been sitting here for a little while and I noticed that one point you kept returning back to was not having data. You do have data. You work directly with people every single day. That's more than enough data, but you don't have something substantial to show people. Is that what you said? Or
I mean, we have data. I mean, we keep meticulous records at goals, so we have data. At goals, and we can tell you age bracket, what kind of housing, why they even came to our office, right? That we have, but that's a small population, a small pool of who we serve. So if I also live here, I live in public housing, I grew up here, I raised my kids here, I spent all my time here. I think I know a little bit,
Yeah, you know
just
more,
a little bit,
more than I know.
just a little bit, so, but so do, they all live here too.
Yeah. So what was, I'm just not understanding then what we need. Just for your district needs statement,
Mhm.
how can we get that information?
Say,
You said saying like, how can we get the data?
I
that we
know,
need?
I think you didn't get a paper copy. We have a lot of data and it's all cited. What people want is more fine-tuned data, which may or may not exist. I think a lot of it doesn't exist. So it's not that we don't have data. We have, the whole report Sylvia did was from data. It's all cited. If you look in the report, it tells you where it comes from. If you look in the district need, it tells you where it comes from. People would like more information because it would tell us more, but a lot of it doesn't exist.
I just wanted to clarify that just so that we could like help you with the
Okay.
district needs statement
Thank
and
you.
also just clarify.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna say to the committee members, if you have questions about points that I'm gonna move away from the district needs statement for a second, because it seems like we keep talking about the data, and the data is really about the report. So just to cap that piece, if you have questions or data that you would like to see at a more granular level, there's nothing wrong with asking the question, and Sylvia will check and she will let us know, right? Please try to do that within the next week, so that way it gives her time to look for it and include it. If there are questions, pressing questions like the ones that Adriana and Michelle had about like who's included, what does that really look like more broadly? Doesn't hurt to ask that question. In terms of the district needs statement, I think we've already looked at everything, and the only substantive change is to rework the sentence under the HDFC buildings. Is there anything else from the committee members for the district needs that we need to include or change that you feel like we cannot move forward without this? If not, then I'm gonna say, let's do a quick straw poll, all right? There's not enough of us really here, but at least we can go back to the full board and say where we were. So, if folks are okay with the language and what we've included in the district needs statement for housing and land use, I'm gonna ask you to, please vote yes. Please raise your hand, no, vote whatever. If you agree and you wanna vote yes, please raise your hand. If you disagree and you don't wanna vote, Molly, you can put your hand down, or you said yes, right? Yeah, okay. Any abstentions, just in case there's any hiding committee members? Okay, we're good. All right, so we're gonna move forward with this district needs statement. The committee members, if you have questions, Jaylin, Michelle, Rod, Alistair, I'm gonna name you all, Molly and Sandra, you're going to forward those questions, please, with some time so that Sylvia can take a look at it. Again, there's nothing wrong with us asking. If it's there and she can include it, she will. And if she can't, then she won't, and she'll let us know, and then we can put that little, feather in our cap, and maybe we can, say to the city next year, hey, these are data sets that you should consider tracking more, so that we can do a better job of what it is that we do. So if that's what we have, then I'm gonna end with the final roll call. Adriana, will you take us through it?
Maris,
Here.
Ariadna here, Alistair.
Here.
Herman, Michelle.
President.
Molly. Campbell. Rod. Daleen. Sandra. Steve.
All right.
Thank
Good.